The Sonoran Desert in July does not forgive mistakes. The temperature at midday can reach 50 degrees Celsius. The ground radiates heat like a furnace. Water evaporates from the body faster than most people understand. When his horse came back to the ranch alone, saddle empty, reins trailing, his brother understood immediately. Something had gone wrong. Something had gone very wrong. Daniel had been in the desert his entire life. He knew all of this. He also knew that knowing something and surviving it are two completely different things. Daniel was 38 years old, a ranch manager in southern Arizona. He had grown up on this land, learned it the way children learn language. Not by studying, but by absorbing. Every canyon, every dry wash, every ridge that meant shelter, and every ridge that meant exposure. He was the kind of man the desert had made, lean, quiet, economical with both words and movement. Nothing wasted. Everything purposeful. Rio had been his horse for 11 years. A bay quarter horse, dark brown coat with a black mane and tail, a single white star on his forehead. Compact and powerful, built for the desert the way Daniel was built for the desert. They had covered thousands of miles of this land together. Rio knew Daniel's weight, his breathing, his moods. A horse that knows its rider that well is not just a horse. It is a partnership. It is a language. It is 11 years of learning each other. It had started as a routine ride, checking the eastern fence line after a report of damage. A 3-hour job, maybe 4. Daniel had done it 100 times. The rattlesnake was under a rock overhang in the shade, the only shade on that section of the trail. Rio saw it before Daniel did. The horse shied hard to the right, a fast, instinctive movement that Daniel, in any other circumstance, would have stayed with. But the ground on the right was loose shale, and the shale gave way. Daniel went down with the horse. Rio recovered, scrambled back to solid ground, shaking and blowing. Daniel did not recover. He hit the shale at the wrong angle and felt his right leg give way beneath him. He lay still for a moment, cataloging. Right leg broken, the tibia, by the feel of it. His canteen had been in his saddlebag. The saddlebag was still on Rio. His radio was in his jacket pocket, but his jacket was also in his saddlebag. His phone had no signal. It had never had signal in this canyon. He looked at the sky. It was 10:15 in the morning. The temperature was already 38 degrees and climbing. By 2 in the afternoon, it would be 47. He calculated the numbers the way his father had taught him, methodically, without panic. The numbers were not good. Rio had not left. The horse stood 12 feet away, sides still heaving from the fall, nostrils wide. He was watching Daniel. Daniel spoke to him, low, calm, the tone he always used. Rio's ears came forward. He took one step toward Daniel, then another. He stopped 2 feet away and lowered his head, his nose almost touching Daniel's shoulder. Daniel reached up with his left hand and rested it on the horse's muzzle. The horse did not move away. The canteen was on Rio's right side, attached to the saddle, in reach if Daniel could get himself upright enough. He tried. The leg sent a message so clear he stopped immediately. He looked at Rio. He thought about what he needed and what he had. He had a horse that would not leave. That was more than he had any right to expect. The shade moved. By noon, the overhang that had sheltered the rattlesnake was the only shade within sight. Daniel could not reach it. He used his hat. He lay still to reduce his body's heat production. He had learned this years ago. In the desert, stillness is its own survival skill. Rio stood over him. Not beside him, over him. The horse positioned himself so that his body blocked the direct sun from falling on Daniel. A shadow, living and warm between Daniel and the sky. Daniel looked up at the underside of his horse and thought, 11 years. 11 years to learn each other well enough for this. He had been talking to Rio throughout the day, telling him about the ranch, About the eastern fence he had never gotten to check, about his brother, who was probably already looking. About the time they had found a lost calf in a canyon 3 miles from here, when Rio had smelled it before Daniel saw it. He told Rio he was sorry about the rattlesnake. Rio's ear swiveled toward him when he said this. Daniel closed his eyes. He had not intended to close them. When he opened them, Rio's face was directly in front of his. The horse had lowered his head completely, his large dark eye inches from Daniel's face. The eye was watching him, steady, present. By 2 in the afternoon, Daniel was in serious trouble. Dehydration had moved from discomfort to something that changed how he thought. His thoughts were slower, less precise. The desert does this, it simplifies everything. Daniel said, "I'm awake." Rio straightened. Daniel started talking again. His brother found him at 4:17 in the afternoon, 6 hours and 2 minutes after the fall. He had followed Rio's tracks back to the canyon, the horse's hoof prints in the shale leading him directly there. Rio heard the truck before Daniel did. The horse lifted his head and whinnied, once, sharp and clear, directed at the canyon rim above. Daniel heard the truck engine a moment later, then his brother's voice calling his name. He answered. He had kept enough voice for that. Daniel's brother said afterward that when he came over the canyon rim and looked down, he saw Rio standing over Daniel like a shelter, like the horse had decided, "This is my job. This is where I stand." He said he had never seen anything like it. He has never seen anything like it since. Daniel spent 8 days in hospital. Broken tibia, severe dehydration, second-degree burns on his forearms where the sun had reached, despite everything. Rio was taken back to the ranch by his brother that evening. He was given extra water and extra feed and stood in the cool of the barn. He ate. He drank. He stood quietly. He had done what he needed to do. Rio was taken back to the ranch by his brother that evening. He was given extra water and extra feed and stood in the cool of the barn. He ate, he drank, he stood quietly. He had done what he needed to do. Daniel was back on Rio 6 weeks later. Not on that trail, not yet. On the flat ground near the ranch, walking slow circles in the early morning cool, getting used to each other again. Or rather, getting used to what they had become. He says he thinks about it every time he rides now. Not the pain, not the heat, not the 6 hours on the canyon floor. He thinks about the moment Rio positioned himself between Daniel and the sun. That quiet, deliberate movement. No drama, no hesitation. Just a horse deciding what his job was in doing it. Daniel had spent 38 years learning the desert. It took 6 hours on a canyon floor to understand that the desert had also been teaching Rio, and that Rio had been paying attention. The way the best companions always are. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Bound to Survive. A new story every week.